While it's the oldest cheese business in New Zealand, Mike and Catherine Carey have owned Barry's Bay for the past 11 years. Since taking over the reins, they've continued to make the traditional handcrafted cheeses from locally sourced milk that the brand is known for.
When the early settlers first arrived on the peninsula in 1895, they built a factory along with, I think, about 9 or 10 other factories in the different bays and started preserving milk for winter. So there's a long history of dairy production over here, and this factory is sort of the last surviving dairy factory. That factory round at Onawi was, I think, burnt down in early 1950s, so this factory was built in 1952 and still stands here today making cheese. I've had the business for 11 years. For us as Cantabrians, it was Barry's Bay is a sort of an iconic brand. We go and do the food shows around the country and you talk to so many people that they talk about when they were kids coming over here for holidays and stopping at the factory and watching cheese being made. And of course in those days you could probably wander into the factory and stand there and look at the milk. We were involved in an industry where all the manufacturing was being taken offshore, so we wanted to buy an industry that it was logical to do it. This is converting local produce at source, so it just seemed a logical business to us. I suppose the advantage is that we're just near the milk, so the milk not having to travel far is good for the milk product in terms of making cheese. Obviously the disadvantage is having to get everything out of here over the hill to Christchurch and then in most cases up into the North Island now. So they're logistic issues, but there's some really good logistics providers in New Zealand now. It's kind of a bit of a multifaceted business. There's a retail shop here. We supply cheese wholesale, and plus there's quite a lot of tourism over here on the harbour. But we really made the decision that to make the business viable, given the cost of running a dairy factory, we needed to grow our wholesale cheese sales. So that's really the area we've gone down, and hence the supermarkets and specialty cheese shops around New Zealand are our target markets. At the moment we're in one of our cool rooms. We've got about 8 cool rooms on the site and they're all different temperatures and the cheese is at different stages of maturation. We run some of the rooms at, when we want to stabilise the maturation down at 6 or 7. The room where we were putting the cheese coat on and the bandages, which we put cheese coat on the Dutch style cheeses to stop them from drying out, and we put the bandages around the cheese just so that when we heat the cheese, it goes upwards and doesn't spread outwards. So when we filled that room up with Musdum and Gruyere, which is what we're making at the moment, we'll heat that room up to about 18 degrees for about a month, and that'll blow the eyes in the cheese. So you'll start to see the cheeses rise. When we think it's risen sufficiently, then we turn the room down, and that slows down the growth of that secondary culture. And then those cheeses go into an ordinary ageing cycle. Traditionally, the factory's always made, what's described as hard yellow cheeses. And, I had a background in the fresh end of the dairy industry when I was a young guy living in Perth, and there's a fair bit of, I would say, stress involved if you're at the fresh end of the market in terms of your testing regimes and your distribution time. When we bought the business, we bought probably 30 tonnes of hard cheese, and so we've just been able to turn that over and over the years grow it each year to get up to sort of where we've probably now got 60 tonnes of cheese in the factory. There's an advantage with aged cheese in that it gets better. That's not necessarily as with Camemberts and Bries where there's a stress that they're going to go past their best. I think there's a point, maybe a good few number of years down the track where these will go past their best, but 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 14 months, they're getting better and better. This is our aged Gouda that in 2014 won the Countdown Champion of Champions Cheese at the Cheese Awards, so that would be aged for 8 to 12 months. Some of our other European styles, our Gruyere and our Musdum, they're the two we saw in the aging room out the back, so those cheeses would be aged for 6 to 9 months. We've got a couple of local collaborations we're doing with some other local producers. This one here is a Wakami kelp. We buy it from Roger Beattie, a local Banks Peninsula farmer who harvests the kelp, dries it out, and we're using that as a coating on one of our Havatis. That cheese won a silver medal at the Cheese Awards last year.
We get our milk from a place in Ridge Road, just down the road from us. And the reason we get the milk from that property is because the owners of the farm actually care about the welfare of their animals, which I think is really important in making cheese. So you've got good, happy animals, you've got good quality milk. Obviously, the grass-fed summer milk is the best quality. We want to try and avoid silage-fed cows if we can, but it's pretty hard in New Zealand. But yeah, the quality and also the cleanliness of the milk that we get from the farm is really important. Depends on the lactation of the cows, the cycle they're in, whether they've got their bums into a howling bloody southerly, the milk quality will change. You have to read that when you make it in the vat, and it depends on what the herd's doing at the time. You have your early stage milk, your spring milk, and I even have to adjust the recipes during the season, the summer milk and then the autumn milk, because the quality of the milk changes and decreases generally as the season gets on, and so you have to change your cook. We have won quite a few awards. While it's always nice to pick up a few medals, it's obviously not my key. My goal is to make good quality cheese every day. But cheese making is like any cook process. You start with a good quality ingredient and you're going to make a good product. We work in a beautiful bloody place here in the peninsula, and making a good quality product every day is demanding, but hugely satisfying when you get it right.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.